What if Atlantis was never in Greece? What if everything we thought we knew about the lost city of Atlantis was wrong? What if the real Atlantis wasn't in the Mediterranean, but thousands of miles away, beneath the deep, dark waters off the coast of Cuba? In 2001, sonar scans revealed something astonishing: massive stone formations, perfectly aligned structures, and what appeared to be ancient pyramids resting silently on the ocean floor. Some experts believe these underwater ruins could be older than any civilization we've ever known. And if that's true, it changes everything. Why this discovery could rewrite history. In this video, we're diving deep, literally, into one of the most controversial underwater discoveries of the 21st century. You'll hear about sonar images off Cuba's western coast that stunned the scientific world. We'll explore expert debates, ancient sea level rise, and the shocking similarities between Plato's description of Atlantis and this newly discovered sunken city. You'll uncover data that many believe was buried or ignored, and examine why the Cuban government has stayed silent. This isn't just a story of lost ruins, this is a potential rewriting of human history. And it's packed with facts, technology, and mystery. What you're about to see will challenge everything. We'll begin with the sonar scans themselves, how they were captured, what they show, and why their symmetrical patterns can't easily be explained by nature. Then we'll investigate the region's geological past and ask the big question: could this area have once been above sea level? You'll learn about the Canadian researchers who made the discovery, why their mission was cut short, and why the story faded from headlines almost overnight. We'll connect the dots with other ancient underwater cities, from Japan to India to the Bahamas. And we'll wrap it all with what the latest technology is revealing, including the possibility that this lost city off Cuba may predate even the oldest parts of known human civilization. Now that you know what's coming, let's go back to the beginning. The 2001 sonar discovery. In the summer of 2001, something extraordinary unfolded beneath the waters off Cuba's western coast, something that would spark controversy, curiosity, and decades of speculation. It wasn't a team of archaeologists who made the discovery. It was a group of Canadian oceanographers and engineers working on a geological mapping mission. Their goal was to scan the seafloor between the Yucatan Peninsula and western Cuba using advanced sonar technology, hoping to uncover valuable information about mineral resources and tectonic formations. Instead, they stumbled upon what looked like the remains of a long-lost city submerged in the deep. The team was led by Paulina Zelitsky, an ocean engineer and co-founder of Advanced Digital Communications, or ADC. Zelitsky had worked with the Cuban government before, deploying underwater survey systems to explore the Gulf of Mexico. This time, they were surveying waters near the Guanahacoibes Peninsula, an area that, on the surface, appeared calm and unremarkable. But what lay hundreds of meters below told a different story. As their sonar equipment swept across the ocean floor, the data began revealing something shocking: vast, symmetrical structures laid out in deliberate patterns. These weren't the random formations you'd expect from coral reefs or geological erosion. The images showed geometric shapes, rectangles, squares, and formations that resembled roads or causeways. Some of the structures appeared pyramid-shaped, others looked like giant platforms. The layout bore an eerie resemblance to an urban grid, almost like a sunken city frozen in time. At a depth between 650 and 750 meters, the location itself was astounding. That depth rules out recent submersion. This wasn't a coastal city that had slowly eroded into the sea. Whatever it was had been underwater for thousands upon thousands of years. For a city to sink to that depth would require a cataclysmic geological event, far more severe than anything recorded in modern history. The coordinates of the site placed it on the edge of the Yucatan Basin, near a tectonic boundary where the North American and Caribbean plates interact. The seafloor here is rugged, shaped by millions of years of tectonic movement. But even in such a dynamic region, the alignment and regularity of the structures stood out. The sonar scan discovery stunned the team. It was unlike anything they had ever seen in previous explorations. The researchers quickly began referring to it informally as the underwater city. Soon after, underwater cameras were deployed to get visual confirmation. The footage was murky but revealed massive stone blocks that appeared to be cut and stacked. Some blocks were the size of small cars. Others were so eroded that their edges had smoothed over time, suggesting that they had been underwater for an immense period, possibly more than 10,000 years. Zelitsky noted that the formations did not resemble natural underwater geology. In interviews, she described seeing structures that appeared built rather than formed by nature, and even mentioned a road-like layout connecting larger blocks, adding weight to the theory that this was once a terrestrial city. When news of the sonar scan began circulating, headlines erupted with comparisons to Atlantis. The idea of a Cuban Atlantis began to spread across media platforms, from scientific circles to ancient mysteries enthusiasts. Zelitsky herself remained cautious. She never outright claimed it was Atlantis or even a lost city, but she emphasized that the sonar readings were real and the structures undeniably unusual. The data was independently verified by several experts, including members of the Cuban Academy of Sciences who were working in collaboration with ADC. Dr. Manuel Iturralde Venente, a respected Cuban geologist and paleontologist, examined the findings and publicly stated that the site could not be explained by known geological processes. He suggested that the formations might date back to the Pleistocene epoch, more than 12,000 years ago, when sea levels were drastically lower than they are today. Yet, for all the groundbreaking potential of this discovery, follow-up expeditions never materialized in full. Funding dried up. Governmental support vanished. Some speculate political tension between Cuba and the United States played a role. Others believe the scientific establishment dismissed the discovery prematurely because it challenged long-held beliefs about the timeline of human civilization. The underwater pyramid structures off Cuba remain officially unclassified. No formal excavation has taken place. No mainstream research body has returned to the site with updated equipment. Even the video footage taken during the mission remains in limited circulation, with only short clips ever reaching the public. These clips show indistinct shapes and low-resolution images, making them easy targets for skeptics. But those who've studied sonar imaging argue that the raw sonar scans themselves, not the video, are the strongest evidence. And those scans remain consistent with a city-like formation lying deep beneath the ocean near Cuba. To this day, Paulina Zelitsky stands by the data. In interviews years after the event, she explained that the discovery had been deeply misunderstood. She never expected it to be swept into the world of Atlantis myths or ancient alien conspiracies. Her focus was always on the data, the shapes, the depth, the location, and the technology that revealed them. Her final word on the matter is one of open-ended wonder. She believes the site deserves further exploration. Because if it really is what it appears to be, a city buried underwater before any known civilization existed, it would mean rethinking everything we know about human history, urban development, and the rise of ancient cultures. What lies beneath Cuba may be more than just ruins. It might be a silent witness to an age far older than any civilization we've ever uncovered. And it all began with a sonar scan intended for something entirely different. Location breakdown. Why Cuba? The waters off the western coast of Cuba may seem like an unlikely place for one of the greatest archaeological mysteries of the modern age. But when you examine the geological and tectonic history of the region, it starts to make a lot more sense. This isn't just a stretch of ocean between two popular tourist destinations. It's a geologically active and historically unstable region, shaped by enormous forces over millions of years, forces that could very well have swallowed entire landmasses whole. Cuba sits on the northern edge of the Caribbean plate, a complex and shifting slab of Earth's crust that interacts with the North American plate just to the north. This tectonic collision zone creates deep trenches, volcanic ridges, and active fault lines beneath the sea. One of the most significant features in this region is the Yucatan Channel, a strait that separates western Cuba from the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico. This channel connects the Gulf of Mexico with the Caribbean Sea, and its underwater terrain is anything but simple. It is riddled with ridges, valleys, and sudden drops, some of which plunge hundreds of meters within just a few kilometers. The site of the sonar scan discovery lies just south of this channel, in an area of the ocean floor that reaches depths between 650 and 750 meters. That depth is significant. It means the structures could not have been built or submerged in any recent era. To be resting at that depth, the land they sit on must have sunk long ago, likely during the melting of the ice sheets that ended the last ice age around 11 to 12,000 years ago. At that time, sea levels rose by more than 100 meters across the globe, dramatically reshaping coastlines and drowning entire regions. But even that kind of sea level rise doesn't explain everything. For the Cuban structures to lie more than 700 meters below the surface, tectonic subsidence is almost certainly involved. This means a portion of the Earth's crust beneath that area sank due to tectonic movements, potentially dropping a once-inhabited landmass into the depths of the ocean. The Caribbean plate is particularly known for its instability. It slides eastward at a rate of roughly 2 centimeters per year, colliding with and subducting beneath the North American plate. This slow-motion collision can produce earthquakes, underwater landslides, and in some cases, vertical drops of large sections of land. Geologists studying the region have noted that the seafloor south of Cuba is far from uniform. It's a patchwork of uplifted ridges, sunken valleys, and collapsed escarpments. Satellite and sonar imagery reveals evidence of ancient shorelines now buried deep beneath the sea. Some researchers believe there could have been once connected land between the Yucatan Peninsula and western Cuba, potentially forming a corridor of habitable terrain. If true, that corridor may have included elevated plateaus that are now deep underwater, one of which may be the location of the sonar-detected structures. The theory gains more traction when you consider that the nearby region of the Bahamas hosts the famous Bimini Road, another set of underwater stone formations that many believe to be man-made. These features, too, rest at depths suggesting they were above sea level before the end of the last ice age. Taken together, the Caribbean appears to have once held a much larger landmass, parts of which are now scattered and sunken beneath modern coastlines. Dating the geological features around Cuba has been a challenge, especially since the structures in question haven't been physically excavated. But based on sediment analysis and surrounding tectonic modeling, some geologists estimate that the seabed around the sonar site began its descent more than 10,000 years ago, coinciding with the global flood myths found in ancient cultures worldwide. This is also the exact period Plato referenced when describing the sinking of Atlantis, adding fuel to theories that the lost city might not have been in the Mediterranean at all, but somewhere in the Caribbean. Adding to the intrigue is the unusual calm of the region today. For an area shaped by such violent forces, the waters off Cuba's west coast are remarkably still, almost deceptively so. This makes them ideal for underwater mapping but also masks the dramatic events that shaped them. The land beneath those waters has shifted, cracked, and collapsed over millennia. It is entirely plausible that an ancient civilization once thrived there, unaware that the ground they built upon would one day vanish into the sea. Why Cuba? Because geologically, it fits. The tectonic activity, the location near a deep channel, the evidence of sudden land subsidence, and the timing of global sea level rise all converge here. Add the sonar images to that equation, and you no longer have a fringe theory. You have a mystery rooted in science, one that begs to be explored further. This stretch of ocean may be hiding not just natural secrets, but the ruins of something built long before history officially began. Are these man-made structures? As soon as the sonar images from the ocean floor off Cuba's western coast were revealed, one question echoed across scientific and public circles alike. Were these formations the result of natural geological processes, or had something, or someone, built them? That question still haunts researchers today. Because what the sonar scan showed doesn't look like chaos. It looks like precision. The first thing that stood out to the Canadian exploration team in 2001 was the unmistakable symmetry of the structures. The scanned images, which were cross-checked using advanced side-scan sonar equipment, revealed large rectangular formations arranged in rows. Some of them stretched over several hundred meters. They appeared to follow a predictable orientation, almost like a city grid. Sharp right angles, uniform spacing, and distinct boundaries suggested deliberate design. These weren't the irregular lumps of coral or eroded seafloor commonly seen in underwater scans. They were aligned, patterned, and, perhaps most significantly, they appeared to be clustered in groups. Among the shapes, several stood out as pyramid-like. These weren't just small mounds or isolated formations. They had tiered elevations, pointed peaks, and broad bases, just like the architectural features of pyramids found in Egypt, Mesoamerica, and other parts of the ancient world. Some sonar interpretations showed long, flat platforms next to these pyramid structures, resembling plazas or ceremonial spaces. Others resembled what might be interpreted as roadways or corridors linking the formations, forming a cohesive and possibly urban layout. When analysts began mapping the structures in three-dimensional models based on the sonar data, something incredible emerged. These weren't random blocks on the ocean floor. They could be reconstructed as a city-like layout, complete with what appeared to be zoning, areas that might have once been for dwellings, temples, and larger central buildings. One structure measured over 200 meters in length, too large and too orderly to dismiss as a geological accident. Some areas showed patterns that mirrored known ancient designs found on land, such as stepped pyramids and concentric platforms. The debate that followed was fierce. Many geologists argued for natural formation theories. They proposed that the symmetrical shapes could be the result of ancient volcanic activity or tectonic shifts that fractured and raised the seafloor into blocks. Others mention polygonal cracking, a phenomenon where sedimentary rock breaks into geometric shapes due to long-term stress and pressure. But critics of these explanations pointed to the sheer regularity of the patterns. Nature creates symmetry, yes, but rarely does it imitate the layout of a structured city with road-like formations and deliberate spacing between features. Even marine biologists and geophysicists who usually avoid archaeological debates found the images perplexing. The sonar readings lacked the randomness expected from underwater erosion or coral reef development. The consistency in block size, shape, and alignment hinted at human intervention, or at least at some intelligent process that imposed order on the environment. To explore this further, researchers at several independent institutions began running simulations. They used computer models to recreate the underwater terrain based solely on the sonar data. They added hypothetical erosion patterns, simulated underwater currents, and included potential sediment layers to see if natural forces could replicate the layout. The result: while erosion could explain minor formations or broken edges, it couldn't account for the overall design. The city-like grid remained intact in every simulation. That grid, experts said, was the smoking gun. Still, without physical artifacts or samples from the structures themselves, the mystery remains unsolved. And so, theorists looked elsewhere, to similar sites around the world that once faced similar skepticism, but later turned out to be legitimate ancient ruins. One of the most cited comparisons is the Yonaguni monument off the coast of Japan. Discovered in 1986, Yonaguni features massive stone structures beneath the water, including terraces, ramps, and what appears to be a massive staircase carved from bedrock. Initially dismissed as a natural formation, further dives revealed features that strongly suggest human modification, such as right-angled corners, parallel lines, and what looks like engraved symbols on stone surfaces. Like the Cuban site, Yonaguni rests in a seismically active region. Another underwater site that fuels the discussion is Dwarka, off the coast of Gujarat, India. Thought to be the legendary city of Lord Krishna, Dwarka lies submerged beneath the Arabian Sea. Discovered in the early 2000s using sonar and diving expeditions, it features walls, plinths, and structured grids that have since been acknowledged as man-made by the Archaeological Survey of India. Radiocarbon dating from nearby artifacts suggests a date older than any known Indian civilization. And then there's the Bimini Road in the Bahamas, a shallow underwater formation made of large rectangular limestone blocks. Discovered in the 1960s, Bimini was long thought to be a natural beach rock formation. But after decades of study, several researchers proposed that the blocks were moved and placed intentionally, possibly as part of a megalithic harbor or ceremonial walkway. The site sits along what some believe to be the edge of a sunken landmass that could have supported advanced cultures during the last ice age. What ties all these locations together is the pattern, recurring architectural features, regular geometric layouts, and alignment to cardinal directions or celestial events. In the case of Cuba, the sonar structures fit that pattern almost perfectly. The pyramid shapes resemble Mesoamerican ziggurats. The long flat surfaces mirror ceremonial plazas. The straight formations echo causeways used for processions or transport. If such features exist across multiple sites worldwide, the question becomes not whether Cuba's structures are real, but whether they are part of a lost chapter in human history, one that spans continents and lies buried beneath the sea. Skeptics continue to ask for physical proof. And that's fair. No expedition has yet brought up carved stones, pottery shards, or tools from the site off Cuba's coast. But then again, no expedition has truly gone back. The technology exists. Deep-sea ROVs with high-resolution cameras, sediment sampling arms, and even laser scanners could map the site in unprecedented detail. Yet decades later, it remains untouched, officially unclassified, and shrouded in silence. Are these formations the work of nature, or did human hands shape them long before recorded history began? The sonar images tell a story of symmetry, alignment, and structure. The simulations tell us nature struggles to explain what's down there. And comparisons from other underwater anomalies across the world suggest a pattern that can't be ignored. Whether man-made or not, the underwater formations off Cuba are unlike anything else in the Caribbean. They whisper of purpose. They echo with possibility. And until someone returns to study them up close, the ocean will keep its secrets, cradling a mystery that challenges the very foundation of what we know about our past. The Atlantis connection. And few names evoke such mystery, controversy, and fascination as Atlantis. It's a word that instantly conjures up visions of a lost golden civilization swallowed by the sea. But what if the idea of Atlantis isn't just legend? What if Plato's story was rooted in a forgotten truth? And what if the real Atlantis lies not in the Mediterranean, but in the waters off Cuba's coast? The story of Atlantis begins with the ancient Greek philosopher Plato. In his dialogues Timaeus and Critias, written around 360 BCE, he describes a highly advanced island civilization that existed beyond the Pillars of Hercules, the ancient name for the Strait of Gibraltar. According to Plato, Atlantis was a powerful maritime empire with monumental architecture, grand temples, and a highly organized society. But in a single day and night of catastrophic earthquakes and floods, it vanished beneath the ocean. Plato claimed this disaster occurred 9,000 years before his time, which places the destruction of Atlantis at approximately 11,600 years ago, right at the end of the last ice age. This time frame is more than just a number. Around 11,000 years ago, the Earth was undergoing one of its most dramatic transitions. Glaciers were melting, sea levels were rising rapidly, and entire coastal regions were swallowed by the oceans. Scientific studies confirm that global sea levels rose by more than 100 meters during this period. Ancient shorelines were lost, islands disappeared, and any coastal civilization unlucky enough to be in the path of rising waters would have been erased almost overnight. When researchers began to analyze the sonar images off Cuba's western coast, they couldn't help but notice that the site appeared to rest at a depth consistent with a structure that might have been submerged at the end of the last ice age. This correlation wasn't just a geological curiosity, it matched the exact window of time that Plato had cited in his account of Atlantis. Could this be coincidence? Perhaps. But for many, the alignment of location, depth, and date raises serious questions. Then there's the geography. While many have focused on the Mediterranean, especially the island of Santorini, as a possible site for Atlantis, Plato was clear in his description. Atlantis lay beyond the Pillars of Hercules. That would place it in the Atlantic Ocean, not the Aegean. The Caribbean, specifically the area between the Yucatan Peninsula and western Cuba, fits this location far more precisely than anything found near Greece. This region opens directly into the Atlantic and could easily have been accessible to ancient seafaring cultures that Plato described as highly advanced navigators. What makes the Cuban sonar site even more compelling is its physical similarity to Plato's description. He spoke of concentric circles of land and water, grand buildings arranged in geometric patterns, and central structures surrounded by canals or moats. Some interpretations of the sonar scan suggest just that, a city-like layout with roads or platforms and pyramid-like structures in the center. When map overlays were created comparing Plato's ancient descriptions with the layout detected off Cuba, many researchers were stunned by the resemblance. It wasn't a perfect match, but the patterns were undeniably similar. To add to the intrigue, researchers have pointed out that the region is home to other unusual features, including the Great Blue Hole near Belize, deep underwater channels, and submerged ridges that may once have been above water. The entire Caribbean basin, in fact, may have looked radically different before the Ice Age ended. Land bridges could have connected islands, and vast plains might have stretched where there is now only sea. In such a world, a thriving civilization could have emerged and been entirely erased without leaving a trace above ground. The idea that Cuba might hold the key to Atlantis has been met with both excitement and skepticism. Believers point to the growing body of evidence, sonar scans, geological timelines, and Plato's own text, to argue that the Cuban underwater structures represent a true historical site. They suggest that mainstream archaeology has ignored or suppressed these findings because they conflict with the established timeline of human civilization. Skeptics, on the other hand, remain firm in their stance. They argue that Plato's story was allegorical, a myth designed to illustrate philosophical ideas rather than historical truth. They claim the sonar images can be explained by natural formations, and that linking them to Atlantis is speculative at best. Some dismiss the entire theory as pseudoscience, fueled by the public's appetite for ancient mysteries. But what makes this debate different from others is that the Cuban sonar site is real. It exists. It was discovered using modern scientific equipment. Its depth is measurable. Its layout is recorded. And its age, while not confirmed through excavation, fits a timeline that lines up almost too neatly with Plato's narrative. This isn't a case of chasing shadows or translating ancient symbols. This is a physical site on our modern maps, one that begs for exploration. As more researchers revisit Plato's words with a scientific lens, they're beginning to see patterns. He wasn't vague. He gave specific details about location, society, architecture, and catastrophe. And while his numbers may have been rounded or stylized, the core story holds up remarkably well when compared with what we now know about sea level rise and geological shifts at the end of the Ice Age. So, could the city off Cuba be Atlantis? The answer depends on what you believe Atlantis really was. If it was an advanced civilization that flourished before known history and was lost to the sea, then Cuba's sunken structures fit that definition. If Atlantis was merely a myth, then perhaps what lies beneath the waves is something entirely different, but no less extraordinary. Either way, the sonar discovery forces us to rethink what we know about our past. It challenges the boundaries of archaeology, mythology, and science. And it dares to ask the question that has echoed through time since Plato first wrote about it: what else lies beneath the waves, waiting to be found? The truth about Atlantis may not lie in ancient scrolls or dusty libraries, but in the deep waters off a familiar island, an island that has guarded its secrets for over 10,000 years. Suppressed or ignored. When news first broke in 2001 about a possible sunken city discovered off the coast of Cuba, it seemed like the kind of story that would light up headlines across the globe. Ancient structures nearly a kilometer underwater. Sonar scans showing massive pyramids and roads. A lost city potentially older than Atlantis. It had everything: mystery, history, science, and controversy. And yet, the story barely made it past a few scattered reports. mainstream outlets gave it minimal attention. Scientific journals went silent. There were no documentaries, no international expeditions, no global collaborations. It simply vanished from public discourse. And that raises a troubling question. Why? The immediate assumption is that something so explosive must have been suppressed. The evidence was there, after all. High-resolution sonar scans. Professional engineers with decades of experience. Collaborations between a Canadian firm and the Cuban government. So why didn't it become the center of archaeological debate, or the focus of new underwater missions? To understand that silence, you have to consider the political context. In 2001, relations between Cuba and the United States were still frozen in Cold War tension. The US embargo had been in place for decades, and Cuba remained largely isolated from American academic and technological support. Access to Cuban waters was strictly limited. And the discovery was made by a private firm working in direct partnership with the Cuban government, which made US institutions hesitant to get involved. Even those who were intrigued by the sonar findings found themselves constrained by travel restrictions, diplomatic red tape, and fear of professional backlash. But the political climate doesn't fully explain the lack of interest from the global scientific community. After all, discoveries of this scale have historically transcended borders. So, we must look deeper into the realm of academic gatekeeping. The idea that an ancient civilization might have existed 10,000 years ago, only to be swallowed by the sea, is not something mainstream archaeology is comfortable with. It contradicts the accepted timeline of human development. According to the conventional narrative, the first complex cities emerged in Mesopotamia around 6,000 years ago. Anything significantly older than that is often dismissed as fantasy. So when sonar scans showed symmetrical structures at a depth that could only make sense if they predated known civilizations, the response from many academic circles wasn't excitement, it was dismissal. The findings were labeled as anomalies, and speculation was discouraged. Researchers risked their credibility by engaging with the theory. Funding for follow-up missions dried up quickly, and institutions distanced themselves from the project. The phrase, underwater city, became taboo. And the discovery was quietly shelved, filed away under a growing list of inconvenient finds that don't fit neatly into our current understanding of history. Then there's the issue of economic disinterest. Underwater archaeology is incredibly expensive. It requires specialized equipment, deep-sea submersibles, multinational collaboration, and years of funding. Without strong institutional backing or a clear economic incentive, few organizations were willing to take on the risk. And because the site was located in Cuban waters, controlled by a government with strained international relations, private sponsors hesitated. There was no obvious payoff, and too many potential complications. Yet despite the silence in academic and political corridors, the discovery did spark interest among independent researchers, citizen scientists, and alternative history communities. For a while, websites lit up with theories. Forums debated the sonar data. Some claimed it was definitive proof of Atlantis, while others warned that the discovery would be buried under bureaucracy and denial. Paulina Zelitsky, who led the team that made the initial find, gave interviews and continued to defend the authenticity of the sonar images. But without institutional support, she couldn't return to the site. Her team had neither the funds nor the clearance. The most important underwater discovery of the modern era had become untouchable. The media played its part too. Mainstream news outlets briefly covered the story, but coverage was shallow and often skeptical. There was little follow-up, no investigative deep dives, and certainly no documentaries produced by major networks. By contrast, lesser discoveries in the Mediterranean or Europe often receive massive attention, even when the evidence is thinner. Why would such a significant finding receive so little press? Some point to editorial bias, editors deciding what qualifies as newsworthy or scientifically valid. Others suggest the story simply didn't fit into the narrative most media outlets are comfortable telling. A lost civilization beneath the sea, ignored by experts, hidden by geopolitics, it sounds too much like a conspiracy. And yet, the evidence was there. The sonar scans weren't fiction. The coordinates were real. The potential implications were staggering. In the years since the discovery, smaller outlets and alternative media have kept the story alive. Some documentaries on streaming platforms have touched on it. Independent YouTube channels continue to revisit the sonar images and argue for further exploration. But without new expeditions, the conversation remains speculative. And the academic silence remains deafening. What we're left with is a case study in how history can be lost not just to the sea, but to human institutions. Political walls, academic dogma, and economic caution have all played a part in burying this discovery. Not with sand or silt, but with indifference. Somewhere off the coast of Cuba, structures still lie in darkness, untouched and unexamined. They don't just represent a mystery. They represent a failure to investigate, a reluctance to follow evidence wherever it leads. So was this discovery suppressed? Or was it simply ignored because it made too many people uncomfortable? In the end, the result is the same. One of the most extraordinary underwater discoveries in recent memory was left behind, unexplored, and unexplained. And until someone dares to return, the silence will continue. Comparative discoveries around the world. The mysterious sonar scans off the coast of Cuba aren't an isolated anomaly. They are part of a larger global pattern, one that suggests something extraordinary about our ancient past. Across the world, beneath the oceans and lakes, lie other enigmatic sites that echo the same puzzling characteristics. Structures that defy geological explanation. City-like grids submerged deep underwater. Pyramids, plazas, and what some experts dare to call megalithic architecture. If the Cuban site hints at a lost civilization, these other discoveries might help complete the picture. Let's begin in the waters off the coast of Japan, where one of the most debated underwater discoveries ever made still challenges conventional thinking. In 1986, a diver exploring near the southern Ryukyu Islands stumbled upon a vast, stepped stone structure now known as the Yonaguni Monument. The formation lies under 30 meters of water and spans over 500 feet in length. It features massive terraces, straight edges, right angles, and what appears to be a monumental staircase carved into the rock. There are also large flat platforms, channels resembling walkways, and stone pillars rising vertically from the base. For years, the Yonaguni Monument was dismissed as a natural formation, created by underwater currents and tectonic activity. But several researchers, including geologist Dr. Masaaki Kimura, have strongly argued that the monument shows signs of deliberate shaping. Dr. Kimura's underwater surveys documented not only the architectural precision of the site, but also what he believes are carvings, steps, and even symbolic features resembling temples or altars. Radiocarbon dating of marine life encrusting the stones places the submersion of the structure at around 10,000 years ago, once again matching the timeline of post-ice age sea level rise. The similarities to the Cuban site are striking, especially in the symmetry, depth, and age. Travel west to the coast of India, and another underwater enigma comes into view. Off the shore of Dwarka, a city with deep mythological roots, divers uncovered the remains of what appears to be a sunken settlement. Stone blocks, walls, streets, and anchoring points for boats lie beneath the Arabian Sea. These findings align with ancient Hindu texts that speak of Dwarka as the legendary city of Lord Krishna, a city said to have been swallowed by the ocean in a single night. Indian marine archaeologists have confirmed the presence of man-made structures underwater and have retrieved pottery, construction materials, and other artifacts. Some of the recovered items have been dated to at least 9,000 years ago, suggesting the area was once dry land before being overtaken by the sea. Then there are the ruins in Lake Van, a vast body of water in eastern Turkey. In 2017, a team of Turkish archaeologists exploring the lake's depths discovered a massive fortress submerged beneath the water. The walls of the structure extended for hundreds of meters, with stone blocks reaching as high as 3 to 4 meters tall. The researchers linked the construction style to the ancient Urartu civilization, which flourished in the region more than 3,000 years ago. But what puzzled the team was not the fortress itself. It was the depth at which it sat and the possibility that much of the surrounding land may have once supported human life before Lake Van expanded to its current size. The site reignited interest in Turkey's underwater heritage and led some to ask whether even older, unknown settlements might. Not far from the Florida coast, in the Bahamas, lies the famed Bimini Road. This underwater formation, discovered in 1968, consists of large, flat, rectangular limestone blocks arranged in a linear fashion. They appear to form a road or wall, stretching nearly a kilometer in length. At first glance, the formation seems too structured to be natural. The stones are evenly spaced, often aligned in right angles, and show signs of wear and erosion consistent with ancient construction. While mainstream science still debates its origins, many believe the Bimini Road was once part of a larger harbor, dock, or ceremonial site. Some even suggest it's part of a submerged city, one that could connect to the broader Atlantis legend. The road sits at a relatively shallow depth, suggesting it was likely submerged toward the end of the last ice age, once again around 11,000 years ago. What ties all these sites together is a set of recurring features that challenge the traditional story of early human civilization. First, there's the unmistakable presence of geometric and symmetrical structures, grids, pyramids, roads, plazas, and walls. Second, they're all underwater, often at depths that indicate they were built or inhabited before sea levels rose dramatically. Third, the dating of these sites consistently falls around the end of the Ice Age, between 10 and 12,000 years ago. And finally, many of these locations were once coastal or lowland regions, ideal for early human settlement. The global distribution of these submerged ruins also raises a provocative question. Were ancient civilizations more advanced, and more widespread, than we've been taught? Could human societies, long before the rise of Egypt or Mesopotamia, have built complex urban environments that were later lost to cataclysmic floods and tectonic shifts? And if so, why hasn't mainstream science connected the dots? One possible reason is the difficulty of underwater archaeology itself. These sites are expensive to explore, politically complicated, and technologically demanding. But there's also a deeper hesitation, a reluctance to embrace the idea that advanced civilizations may have existed before the timeline we've come to accept. To admit that would mean rethinking not just when civilization began, but how it developed, and where it may have first taken root. The structures off Cuba, when placed alongside Yonaguni, Dwarka, Lake Van, and Bimini, begin to look less like an isolated anomaly and more like a missing piece of a global puzzle. A puzzle that suggests our ancient ancestors may have built great cities, observed the stars, understood engineering, and left behind monuments now hidden beneath the sea. These underwater sites are whispering the same message from different corners of the world. Something came before. Something that history has forgotten, or perhaps deliberately chosen to ignore. And if we truly want to understand where we came from, we may need to start listening to the silence beneath the waves. Because the lost civilizations of our world might not be myths after all. They might simply be waiting to be rediscovered. Theories and controversies. Whenever a discovery threatens to upend our understanding of the past, it is met with more than just curiosity. It draws scrutiny, debate, and often resistance. The sonar scans off Cuba's coast have stirred all of this and more. Because if those underwater formations truly represent a lost city, then it forces us to consider one of the most provocative questions in human history. Could there have been an advanced civilization before all others, long before Sumer, Egypt, or the Indus Valley? The theory of advanced prehistoric civilizations has moved steadily from fringe speculation to a topic of serious, if cautious, inquiry. Mainstream archaeology maintains that complex urban societies began forming around 6,000 years ago. But the site near Cuba, along with other global anomalies, suggests a more ancient chapter may be missing. Advocates of this theory argue that civilization as we know it may be a reboot. That humanity rose once before, flourished, and then fell, buried not just by time, but by catastrophic events that reshaped the surface of the Earth. Much of this centers on a period known as the Younger Dryas, an abrupt climatic shift that began roughly 12,900 years ago and lasted over 1,000 years. It marked the end of the last glacial period and brought with it sudden cooling, megafaunal extinction, and dramatic sea level rise. Scientists have long debated the cause of this event. Some suggest it was triggered by a disruption in oceanic currents. Others propose it was caused by a comet or asteroid impact, as suggested by the presence of a thin layer of platinum and microscopic spherules found across several continents. Regardless of the cause, the Younger Dryas was devastating. And it occurred precisely when many of these supposed underwater cities, like the one off Cuba, would have been above sea level. Supporters of the Cuban sonar discovery argue that a global catastrophe could have easily wiped out coastal civilizations, many of which would have been situated near rivers, deltas, and shorelines, the most habitable and resource-rich environments. Rising seas could have swallowed cities whole, leaving behind little more than submerged stone structures and scattered myths. Plato's tale of Atlantis disappearing in a single day and night of floods and earthquakes, often dismissed as allegory, suddenly seems plausible in this context. One of the strongest arguments for revisiting human timelines comes not from underwater ruins, but from the hills of southeastern Turkey. There lies Göbekli Tepe, a megalithic temple complex radiocarbon dated to around 9600 BCE, making it over 11,000 years old. This site predates Stonehenge by more than 6,000 years and was built by a society with no evidence of agriculture, pottery, or domesticated animals. The stones are massive, precisely carved, and arranged in a sophisticated pattern of enclosures. The builders of Göbekli Tepe were organized, intelligent, and capable of long-term planning, challenging the idea that civilization began with farming. If humans were capable of such monumental architecture so early, then why wouldn't they also have had coastal settlements or seafaring abilities? Could the structures found off Cuba and in other underwater sites be the remnants of those same early builders? Göbekli Tepe proves that human sophistication predates the accepted timeline. The Cuban site may prove that such sophistication extended across continents, and perhaps to the edges of a lost civilization. Of course, no discussion of ancient mysteries is complete without touching the theory that draws the most controversy and attention: ancient aliens. Popularized by television shows and countless books, this idea suggests that extraterrestrial beings visited Earth in the distant past and either influenced or directly taught early humans how to build, organize, and construct monumental sites. Proponents point to the sudden appearance of complex architecture, astronomical alignments, and global myths about gods descending from the sky. In the case of the Cuban site, the pyramid-like shapes, their alignment, and the absence of cultural context lead some to speculate that it may have been built not just by an early civilization, but with help from beyond. Mainstream scholars dismiss this as pseudoscience, and with good reason. The ancient alien theory often lacks hard evidence and leans heavily on speculation. But its popularity underscores something deeper: a hunger to explain what conventional narratives cannot. When structures are discovered that don't fit into the known progression of human development, and when those discoveries are dismissed without serious investigation, the public turns to alternative explanations. Whether alien or not, these theories persist because the official answers often fall short. And that leads us to the final and perhaps most troubling aspect of the controversy: academic resistance. Institutions built on established timelines and theories are rarely eager to embrace ideas that challenge their foundations. When anomalies are discovered, structures too old, too precise, or too misaligned with current models, they are frequently ignored, explained away, or buried under jargon. Researchers who challenge consensus often find themselves sidelined, their funding cut, their reputations questioned. This isn't just a matter of scientific caution. It's institutional inertia. Admitting that a lost city lies off the coast of Cuba would not only validate fringe researchers, it would demand a complete rewriting of history textbooks. It would require admitting that our understanding of the human past is incomplete, and that civilizations may have risen and fallen before the dawn of written records. For many in academia, that is too disruptive a possibility. Yet the evidence continues to surface, literally. From Turkey to Japan, from India to the Caribbean, the ruins whisper the same truth. Something was here. Something capable of building with precision and purpose. Whether they were wiped out by rising seas, cosmic impacts, or their own collapse remains unknown. But their legacy may still lie hidden beneath the oceans, waiting to be rediscovered. In the case of the Cuban Sonar site, the controversy is far from over. Theories continue to grow, and the silence from the scientific establishment only adds to the intrigue. Whether it was an early human civilization lost to time, the remains of a forgotten race, or something even more extraordinary, the site forces us to confront the possibility that human history is far older, and far stranger, than we've been taught. Until we return to the depths with open minds and open eyes, the mystery will remain. Not just in sonar images or stone formations, but in the stubborn refusal to see what may lie just beneath the surface. What's next? The mysterious sonar structures off Cuba's coast have remained untouched for over 2 decades. No major expeditions have returned to the site. No samples have been retrieved. No structures have been photographed in high resolution. Yet despite the silence, there is renewed hope that the coming years may finally unlock the secrets that have rested quietly in the depths for thousands of years. Advancements in underwater technology are making it increasingly difficult to ignore discoveries like the Cuban site. Tools that once seemed experimental or cost-prohibitive are now accessible to a wider range of institutions, independent researchers, and even citizen-led initiatives. One of the most promising developments is the application of deep-sea LiDAR, a laser-based scanning method that can penetrate murky water and sediment to produce detailed 3D maps of the seafloor. If deployed over the sonar site, it could provide visual clarity that has eluded researchers for years. Precise imaging could confirm whether the formations are naturally eroded bedrock or truly artificial structures laid out in deliberate patterns. Then there are submersibles, unmanned remotely operated vehicles, or ROVs, equipped with high-definition cameras, robotic arms, and advanced navigation systems. Today's deep-sea ROVs can dive well beyond the 750-meter depth where the Cuban structures rest, allowing for extended surveys, sampling, and close-up exploration. Unlike in 2001, when sonar was the best available tool, modern submersibles can now hover inches away from the formations, record crystal clear video, and even extract pieces of stone for geological and toolmark analysis. Some private companies specializing in ocean floor mapping have expressed interest in targeting historical anomalies rather than just oil fields or mineral deposits. These firms, often working alongside universities, have the ability to conduct independent surveys using privately owned vessels. Unlike large academic institutions tied to national politics or traditional paradigms, these smaller organizations operate with more flexibility. Their involvement could open the door to fresh data and insights, even without official government funding. At the same time, a growing movement of citizen scientists is bringing new energy to ancient mystery research. Platforms that crowdsource funding for archaeological projects have seen success in recent years, giving ordinary people a role in exploring lost civilizations. Independent researchers and documentary filmmakers are also reigniting public interest in underwater anomalies, especially those ignored or dismissed by mainstream academia. As the story of the Cuban sonar site resurfaces, public demand for answers may push institutions to revisit what they once left behind. Still, the question remains: could the site ever be fully excavated? The answer is complicated. Excavating an underwater city nearly a kilometer below the surface is not like exploring a sunken ship in shallow water. It requires significant funding, international cooperation, legal permissions, and a willingness to challenge established narratives. Excavation at that depth would likely involve a combination of remote tools, sediment dredging, and highly controlled operations to preserve any delicate structures or artifacts. But while full excavation might still be a distant goal, surveying and mapping the site in detail is entirely within reach. With today's tools, we can document the formation, date the stone, analyze the surrounding sediment, and search for patterns that confirm whether the layout is intentional or geological. Even without physical artifacts, a clear digital model could offer compelling evidence about the site's origins. Once undeniable patterns emerge, grids, right angles, consistent block sizes, those visuals alone could change minds. If confirmed to be man-made, the implications would be enormous. It would mean that human civilization as we know it didn't begin 6,000 years ago in Mesopotamia, but much earlier, possibly more than 10,000 years ago, during the end of the last ice age. Such a discovery would force a complete re-evaluation of history, archaeology, anthropology, and even mythology. Plato's account of Atlantis would suddenly seem far more like memory than myth. And every assumption about how humans organized, built, and transmitted knowledge would be back on the table. Textbooks would need rewriting. Academic models would need revision. Our entire concept of human progress, from the development of agriculture to the rise of cities, would face serious questions. And perhaps most significantly, we would have to acknowledge that a chapter of our history has been missing all along, hidden beneath the sea. There's also the cultural and psychological impact. Finding evidence of a lost civilization beneath Cuban waters would spark not just academic debate, but global wonder. It would remind us that the past is still largely uncharted. That the oceans, covering 70% of our planet, remain Earth's greatest archive. And that maybe, just maybe, we are not the first advanced civilization to walk this world, just the first to rediscover what others once built and lost. What happens next depends on courage. The courage to look again. To send new eyes, new instruments, and new minds to a place that many dismissed too quickly. The site is there, unchanged, untouched. Waiting. And with every passing year, the tools to explore it grow stronger. The only question left is whether we're ready to see what they will reveal. What we've explored in this video may be one of the most intriguing archaeological mysteries of our time. Off the coast of Cuba, beneath nearly 3/4 of a kilometer of water, lies a formation that could represent a forgotten chapter of human history. Sonar images from 2001 revealed symmetrical structures laid out in a city-like grid, including what appear to be pyramids, platforms, and even roads. These patterns defy natural explanation and match characteristics found in known ancient cities. Only this one happens to be buried under the sea. We looked at the team behind the discovery, led by Paulina Zelitsky, and how a geological mapping mission turned into a revelation that no one expected. We saw how the site's depth and location near the tectonic collision zone of the Caribbean and North American plates supports the theory of cataclysmic submersion. The geological timeline aligns with the end of the last ice age, coinciding with sea level rise and the global flood myths found in ancient cultures. From Japan's Yonaguni monument to India's sunken Dwarka, from Lake Van in Turkey to the Bimini Road in the Bahamas, we explored similar underwater anomalies around the world. Together, they suggest that our planet may have once been home to a network of ancient coastal civilizations, lost to rising waters and tectonic upheavals thousands of years ago. The similarities across continents cannot be easily ignored, nor can the patterns of right angles, pyramid structures, and road-like layouts found in multiple submerged sites. We also examined the intense debate surrounding this discovery. Theories of ancient advanced civilizations. The Younger Dryas Cataclysm. The possibility that human history goes back much further than the textbooks say. Even controversial ideas like ancient alien influence, and the academic resistance that keeps these ideas on the margins despite mounting evidence. And we asked what it would take to go back, to revisit this site with modern technology, from LiDAR to deep-sea submersibles, and finally seek the truth in a place long left untouched. So here's the question that lingers long after the video ends. If we missed an entire city beneath the ocean, what else is waiting to be discovered? Maybe the real lost history of humanity is still hidden beneath the waves. Maybe we've barely scratched the surface. Or maybe, just maybe, we've already found Atlantis, and we just don't want to believe it. If this journey has made you question the past, imagine the possibilities, or wonder what else lies out there, then like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Was Atlantis real? Is this it? Let's continue the search.